Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the John Candy Box Theater and Post Wrestling Live. As you may or may not know, this is a Q&A. So the way we've done it for said Qs, we have two microphones. I'd like to keep the left side of the room to the left side, the right side of the room to the right side. And yeah, it's as simple as this. When you have a question, just go up to one of the microphones. To make sure we're not obstructing any views, let's keep the lines to 2 or 3 people. So when someone's done with their question and they go back to their seat, you can pop up and get in line. But otherwise, without, I want to say this right, further ado, let's give it up for Mr. John Pollock and Wai Ting.
What was yours?
DJ Jopo.
Oh, I didn't have one with any staying power, but yeehaw, Wai Ting is in the house.
Taking off, yeah. Yeehaw.
Guys, thank you for all of you making out today, giving us the ability to claim we sold out, which we legitimately did today. So welcome, everybody, to the John Candy Box Theater. We want to thank Second City for hosting us, Daniel Shehori, Natalie, Matt, the entire crew here helping us, our merchandise over there with Caitlyn and Pauline, and all of you. So thank you so much for coming out. This is awesome.
As well as our amazing MC with that great introduction. Thank you, Robert.
What a pro.
Thank you, guys.
Who also designed the t-shirts. So he is the very talented artist.
So I had a historic moment 30 minutes ago. I had to go get a coffee and offered to get Wai one as well. And as I went to the local Starbucks, I met quite the individual, this employee at Starbucks. As I ordered my 2 coffees, he brought back 1. I had to correct him and say, I ordered 2 coffees. And he just goes, ugh. It's like, whatever. All right. So he gives me my 2 coffees. Then he is first asking me, do you want me to use the special new press machine to make your coffee? It tastes a bit better. It's like, no, I just want the coffee. I don't want the special press machine. He then looks back a second time and says, do you want the tall in a grande cup? It's like, no, I want the tall in the tall cup. I want the grande in the grande cup. And he flustered me so much that as I'm going over and pouring the cream into Wai's coffee, I poured cream into my own coffee.
Wow.
And for the first time ever, I am drinking a medium coffee with 1 cream, and it tastes about as good as Bad Luck Fale's G1 has been. So,
The hater.
so this is on brand. Anyway, how are you doing, Wai?
I'm doing good. I'm in the midst of maybe hour or 2 of 7 hours of recording podcasts, I think, in the middle of today. But this is surely to be the best hour of all of them. So
Wai and I went to sleep approximately at 3 a.m. and woke up at 6 today to watch this damn B Block final and finish that.
Wait, spoiler alert.
Oh, man.
Well, I think we got to cut. No spoilers. Okay.
It's over. Can you believe what they did on Monday? Nuts. Absolutely nuts. WH called me. He was furious. WH Park is in the house, everybody. As well, we've got celebrities here, everybody, because I got to see it up close yesterday. Braden Harrington and Davey Portman, the stars of Up Next. I was so impressed. We went to their tailgate party. This place was full. Braden had a few drinks. He came up. He whispered in my ear. He's like, look in the rearview mirror. We're coming for you. And I was like, whoa, damn, ambitious. It was unbelievable. These guys, close personal friends now of Johnny Gargano. It was an unbelievable tailgate party that they had on Saturday.
How many of you guys were there? Curious. Very healthy amount. And those of you who I guess weren't, you can hear all about it from them.
So as Robert explained, we're going to open it up to questions. So if you do have a question, you can start lining up either side here, and we will keep answering as long as you've got questions. And at the end of the show, we are going to select not even the 2 best questions, our two favorite questions that we get throughout this show. So they can be anything, and we will be giving out a limited edition, 30 made, and that's it. They'll never be made again. Post Wrestling Live in Toronto t-shirts. And our second prize will be the very rare, very little discussed about Post Wrestling cassette.
Yes, that's right. So rare. I forget what we even recorded on those shows.
It's a cassette of us going through our entire first year of running Post Wrestling. So you have to find a cassette player. That's the only way you can hear it. So maybe we outsmarted ourselves with that particular piece of merchandise, but one of you are going to be able to at least leave with physical media in this day and age. So that is it.
First question.
Everyone's nervous to be the first one up, so there you go. He's going to pop the cherry here.
Okay, so I'm assuming you guys saw NXT last night.
Yes.
I didn't see the whole show.
Oh, don't spoil it.
Okay, so
We're kidding.
in your opinion, did we see the last of Johnny Gargano at NXT?
Yes, I would think so. I think that that's probably his wrap-up. I don't think there's much left to do with him at NXT, although my aspirations are not very high for where he's going to be in 6 to 8 months from now. I think we got a preview of that earlier this year, so I do feel that was probably it for Gargano.
Hello.
Hey.
All right, let's go to this side.
Hi, I'm Sean from Toronto. I'm a patron.
Hey, Sean.
And so my question is actually about your Patreon. How impressed were you on how fast it took off? Because I know from personal experience that it can be very hard to start a Patreon.
Astonished. I still can't believe it. How many of you guys are patrons? Just curious. Like the whole room. Most of you guys. Thank
It's
you
okay
all
if
so
you're
much.
not. Like,
Yeah,
you can just-
like I'm not trying to guilt trip anybody. Although it's only you get great content every single anyway. We were stunned, honestly. Like we recorded video about like our first reactions to like seeing our very first patron, and even just like getting one patron to me was like incredible because we were doing these shows for nothing, and I didn't think people would willingly just like hey, like give money anymore to things that they typically get for free, and that has totally been disproven many times, especially with us personally. So I'm always grateful.
Yeah, I think we were all blown away. I mean, I've said it many times before. Like, Wai and I did not start it with any kind of expectation level. We really had no idea. We were going into like this dark space where it was who knows what the response is going to be like. And it was just sort of, we both went with the mentality that let's treat this full time, go all in for 8-9 months, and then we'll see where we are at the end of it. So luckily, before those 8-9 months were up, we realized like this is stable enough that we can maintain this workload. And it's the patrons that allow us to be able to do all the shows we do. If it wasn't for that, we'd be a significantly more limited schedule.
And I'd probably have a side job doing whatever.
Yeah, and I'd be asking people, would you like a grande in a tall cup?
Hey guys, I have a two-part question.
What's your name?
Sorry, my name's Sean from London.
Hey, Sean.
Sean. Okay.
Two-part question. WWE invaded Toronto 4 days. We saw Smash Wrestling host 8 events over 4 days, plus all the other indie events. How is your thought on the indie scene here in Ontario, for starters, and can it survive if WWE does NXT Canada?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that overall, the Ontario independent scene, it's healthier than it's been in my lifetime. I mean, it was 10 years ago that it was really hard to find a show in town, and you really had to go out of your way, and it wasn't much of a thriving scene. I think that for those aren't familiar, in Ontario, they used to be subject to the Ontario Athletic Commission. So that's both good and bad. I'm kind of in the middle of commission oversight. But once that was eliminated, that did allow more shows to run. What we see in Ontario is what you see in a lot of different places, is that you have all these different companies. There's a lot of like head-to-head shows, and certain politics at every level of wrestling, where you work these shows, you don't go and work those shows. I think sometimes that's counterproductive to the scene. But I think that you have a lot of talent, and I think it's been a lot of pressure on this market this week, where you see that it's not necessarily a gigantic traveling event for SummerSlam, and trying to have so many shows that you realize 300 is really good for an Ontario show. You're not going to be drawing 1,000 people here in Toronto.
Yeah, I feel like it's like all markets. I think it's been hit by WWE perhaps pillaging a whole lot of the talent, not just WWE, but a bunch of different promotions. But I think there's still always going to be demand to see like wrestling on an independent level from really hardcore fans, and Toronto has a great deal of hardcore fans.
Yeah, and I don't even, if NXT were to set up an operation here, yes, it makes a lot of sense to be based out of Toronto, but I think honestly for where you would be the most successful, it would be getting out of a major market like Toronto, where you go to smaller places that it's going to have more viability, because Toronto, it's a major league city. I think they'd have a lot of difficulties to get regular shows for all these guys under contract, because if you're Smash Wrestling, you can't be running every weekend. There's just not the demand for that. I don't think NXT would be any different if they were running weekly, for instance. And once you sign these guys, you want them to be getting as many reps as possible and not just being selective with market restrictions. So, over here, your name.
Hey guys, Charles Crawford from
Hey, Charles.
Brampton. How are you?
Nice shirt.
Oh, thank you. I had to make sure I came in right away and grabbed one because I just love what Robert did. It's fantastic work. So awesome job, Robert.
Another applause for Robert.
I got a two-part question as well. We know you guys are really busy coming October with the AEW schedule. I know all of us are, curious as far as, what the plan is for you guys as far as all the shows you're doing.
Yeah, so am I.
I know. What the first question I did have was around the regards to the roundtable. We know you guys have done some great work with that. Had some great guests. I think the last one you did was Ariel Helwani. He was on the last one that you did. Is there plans to still continue to do that? Is that going to come back? Because if anything, we want to, from that Rounders reference, if anything, we want, Johnny Pollock Chan, and of course, Matt Wayman to grace us with that presence again.
Matt Wayman.
So that was the first part of it. The second question is from my friend who fortunately he couldn't make it, Robbie Pro from Woodbridge. He asked if you guys are planning to also do the debut of Glow Season 3, if you're planning on doing a review of that as well.
Yeah, with Glow, we're just going to figure out when to watch some of it, but we'll probably spread it out. I think, what did we do last year? Did we review the whole thing in one?
Pretty much, yeah. This year, I think with it dropping like this week, in the busiest week of the year for us, I think we're probably going to try to spread it out a bit. I want to take my time watching it, quite frankly, and I think we'll probably bring back the double shot at least for this month, and that kind of leads into your second question as far as schedule changes. A lot of it remains to be seen depending on, I think, what the demand is. Any of you guys who posted in that thread, thank you, because that's great research for us. The roundtable, like with a lot of our shows, we get ideas to do them, and we do them with the intent of doing them regularly. So the roundtable at one point was supposed to be a monthly thing. But they got so good because our guests were so good that we just found it difficult to try to top every single one. So at this point, they're more like special editions. If we get in a good guest and we have the time to meet up with them, sit down and record a hour-long interview, we'll go ahead and do it. But it's not necessarily something we're trying to push out every single month.
Yeah, we're hoping to do one. We have a verbal commitment with someone that I'm very excited to do it with, but until it's done, I don't want to state who it is. But hopefully we'll have...
I don't even know who this is.
Well, we have a lot of secrets, Wai. That's what we do.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, over here.
Hi, I'm Danny from down the street.
Down the street.
On the street. I've been
Just
there.
wander out on a Sunday morning and end up in here.
Pretty much. Patron, but more importantly, I'm a tingaling. I think we need to bring that back.
Wow,
putting it
okay,
out
I got
there.
Cowboy, I got Tingalings, I have a lot to choose from. Okay.
Out of context, you just would never know what that means.
But my question is about Cesaro. Do you think he's reached his ceiling of what he can achieve in WWE? And it might be a very short answer, but where do you see his career going?
No, I think absolutely not. I think he's definitely one of the guys on my list of completely underutilized and should be doing way more than I think he is. I think even putting him in a tag team is going backwards. To me, he should be a top level main eventer. Obviously, he's got very shortcomings in certain areas, but I think you can work around a lot of those shortcomings. Cesaro in any other promotion, I think would be a top star.
I think that's the key. I think if he were to go somewhere else, I think you'd see him utilized in a very significant role. In WWE, it becomes very difficult once you're slotted for that amount of time, and it's very rare you have the Kofi Kingston example of someone that sort of breaks through that stigma. I think Cesaro's in his place in WWE, and I think ultimately his decision will be whenever his contract is up, do I go somewhere else for kind of one last big run somewhere else and get that fulfillment, or do I stay here where I would say he would be guaranteed a trainer or producer's job when he hits 40 or so, which is typically when they'll ease guys into those roles. So I think he can still go for many more years, but I think that's kind of his path in WWE is ultimately, settling into a producer trainer role, and he'll probably have a job as long as he wants one there and make a lot of money too. So that doesn't suck. Let's go over here.
Hey, I'm Leo from Ottawa.
Hello, Leo.
Hey, just wondering if you found the mouse.
This fucking mouse. I have a mouse that's loose in my house right now, and my wife went away for the weekend, so I was left with all these mouse traps around the house. So it's like all booby trapped right now. We have not found this damn mouse. It's somewhere just skirting around. I came up as I was watching Triple Mania. I walked up the stairs and I see this mouse just climb or walk right across the floor. And since then, it's driving me nuts to find this thing. I know it's there. I can sense its presence. We have like 8 of these traps and none of it's working. My DMs have been flooded, by the way, with people with tips on how to catch mice. I got photos from someone about catching mice and what they did. This is quite the predicament.
And it's just one? You sure?
That I'm aware of.
Okay.
Things having a party under my dishwasher. There could be multiples. It could be a family at this point. So, no, have not caught the mouse.
You will hear about it if he does.
But there's a candidate for our prize at the end. The mouse question.
Yeah.
Gerard from Toronto.
Hello, Gerard.
Just wondering, I've heard a few times over the years that the mainstream media in Canada, for lack of a better term, has been more willing to cover wrestling than the U.S. media. I'm just wondering if you think that's the case, and has that changed at all with Sports Illustrated and ESPN covering wrestling?
Yeah, I think that there's still certainly that stigma that will exist for professional wrestling. And it's funny, I just did this radio interview this morning and it was like the funniest intro. I'm on hold and the person starts off, well, WWE is taking over the city with SummerSlam tonight. And I'm thinking, okay, this is just going to be kind of a soft interview. And then, but one thing about those wrestlers, the deaths within pro wrestling is one of the great tragedies. Here to talk with us is John Pollock from Post Wrestling. And for the life of me, I don't know what he's about to ask me because those are like very different extremes of how to couch this interview. Anyway, no, but I think what you've seen now, a generation removed where I think the stigma was that much heavier, is that now when you see these people in positions where they're media members or they're program directors, like these people grew up as wrestling fans, and now they're in these positions. So I think when you see the ESPNs of the world covering professional wrestling, Sports Illustrated dedicating time, and mostly people just looking at metrics right now and the volume of wrestling fans that will be attracted to your product, you're just searching for that. So I think what's come with professional wrestling is a begrudging respect. And also, I think you are getting further analysis. Like, it's very rare now you get the real versus fake bullshit. It's more so people understanding what professional wrestling is and more importantly, what it isn't. So I think you get generally a more sophisticated discussion, although with some exceptions.
Yeah, as far as Canadian media kind of being like at the forefront of that, I think, something like Off the Record has a huge part in maybe establishing that type of reputation. Things like, the law prior to like either of us, being a part of it, I think kind of spearheaded a lot of that as well. I don't know, maybe Canadians just kind of like have always understood wrestling a little bit better from a bit more of a, less stigmatized way. And I think it kind of goes towards how hardcore the fan base is.
You have to remember, like with Maple Leaf Wrestling, with Stampede Wrestling, I mean, the historical roots of professional wrestling that predate the WWF's expansion. I mean, wrestling was, it wasn't just the circuses in town. Like, there was a degree of, I just think people understood it a lot further because of those historical roots and people growing up on it, I think, understanding wrestling at a deeper level in Canada. And you also see that in the U.S. in markets with that history, like a Houston or a St. Louis, as well as examples.
Chris from London, 2 questions. Number 1, your thoughts on the WXW show on Friday. And then number 2 is any update on Tony Storm?
Toni Storm, I haven't heard any update other than apparently she like injured her arm the night before. So it sounds like it was more so a precaution, but I don't know that for certain. I thought the WXW card, that was the best match I saw this week, was the Daisuke Sakamoto Walter match. It was excellent. It was a really strong presentation from WXW. I thought that their ring announcer, he was awesome that they brought in as well. Yeah. It was just like a really professionally run show. 6 matches to me is a great length for a show, especially during one of these weekends where people's time is somewhat limited. So you go 2 hours and 15 minutes.
That's 6 quality matches.
Yeah, like you had a really good show, and I can't complain with that main event with Walter Daisuke Sakamoto.
That was great. Yuki Ishikawa versus Tim Thatcher was also, I thought, a real stand-up for me. But like top to bottom, I thought you had good variety, and WXW is not a product that I wonder how these people would even like really find out about it.
Not on my Twitter.
Yeah, like other than obviously like through certain websites and podcasts and whatnot. But like to see that place filled like. We're pretty close to like capacity. I thought was really cool. So I hope they run again.
Yeah, I thought they had a really great show on Friday. I didn't see the Ambition show Thursday, but it sounded like that was a good show too with the tournament. Over here.
Hey.
Hi, Mark from Paris, Ontario.
Yeah, Mark.
Not France. Just wanted to kind of follow up on the Canadian piece. I watch Impact Wrestling. I hope I don't get booed for that. I think it's a really good show right now. I think the app's really strong. I think a lot of the it's manageable because it doesn't take 25 hours of your week to follow. And I'm just wondering, I think I've lived in a lot of places in Canada, and I think places like Hamilton, Brantford, Sudbury, Ottawa, Gatineau, the East Coast, they have this history with Canadian professional wrestling that was big time, even international wrestling with Maple Leaf and the others. Do you think there's an option or a hope that maybe Impact will connect with its Canadian roots and be kind of like the Canadian company? Because I think with AEW doing what they're doing in the States, trying to get back the old WCW fans, I think there's an audience of something like that here that is underserved if we don't just stay in Toronto. What do you think the options are for Impact to be successful in that way?
I think ultimately right now, to be truly successful in professional wrestling, it has to be through a major television deal, and that's going to mean something in the U.S. unless you were to partner up with a DAZN and get an enormous contract. And with a DAZN, it comes with, I think, limited visibility as well. I think Impact's in a tough position right now because the show is so much better, and it's been for a while. It's just you go back to even 5 years ago, the appetite and just what was available for wrestling fans was so much smaller. Impact had so many things at its doorstep that I don't think it truly capitalized on. Like at a time when they had a corner of the talent market that WWE was passing on, and they had the access, and they had these names, and they had strong television, and they had the ability to go into these mid-size markets and draw very well, and they had the ability to go in and be kind of this mix between a national touring company, but also do meet and greets right after a show and have that personal connection with their audience. And it's an unfortunate story of where Impact has ended now, because now when the product's really tightened up and the creative has gotten better, it's just at a time when people have so many other options, and just being a good wrestling show isn't enough to cut it. You need big stars and you need more visibility. It's something they're lacking at this point. I don't know if going regional is necessarily the answer now. I think you could tour Canada and go to smaller places that don't get a lot of big wrestling. But ultimately, for them, I think it's getting that bigger television deal. I think that's imperative for them right now.
As far as like, I think what they would do for the local or Canadian scene, I mean, I think you're already kind of seeing that with the people that are in charge. I mean, and the talent that they're picking up and featuring. A lot of it is Canadian. And but I think knowing what we know of the parent company, I feel like much of the idea of getting Impact in the first place is to expand, and that's a global expansion. Impact is it's an internationally recognized brand, at least compared to say things like the Fight Network and other things in their portfolio. So I don't necessarily see them maybe focusing on Canadian markets as sort of a priority, and instead more so the other way around.
Hi guys, I'm Gary from Brampton. So I have a two-part question.
I got a chance to catch the BH 90210 that premiered this week.
As did I.
Wondering where that first question was going.
Yeah, so the first part is your thoughts about this new show, and it got me thinking also like, what are some like post wrestling careers that have like surprised you or impressed you that you've heard about like former wrestlers taking on?
So post wrestling careers, as in.
Okay, that was confusing.
Should have come up with a better name for our podcast.
It's like, what's Braden's real life? A whole reality series on Braden would be phenomenal. Okay, gotcha. So
I just meant like post wrestling, the actual wrestlers and what careers they took on after, like how 90210 they had to take on
guys that have moved on from the industry.
I'm still
is what
so
you're
confused.
asking. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, first of all, do you want me to take the
Yes, please.
90210 question? It was. I wasn't crazy about the first episode. I don't think this is a concept that's really going to hit with people. There's a certain nostalgia value, but I feel like that is going to run its course after a couple of weeks. So I don't really have high hopes for this series, but I'll keep an open mind. For those that are not familiar, they have taken the real actors and actresses, and that is who they are playing in this series, where they're trying to pitch their show to get started up again. And that is the concept of the show that has been picked up.
I think it sounds cool, but you're saying in execution, not.
It's one weekend. We'll see where things go. So I'm keeping my mind open.
And the question about post wrestling careers.
Yeah, guys that have gone on. I don't know. There aren't.
What didn't like WWE do a whole like online series? Like Jimmy Wang Yang has some party bus, and like Ted DiBiase Jr. is like a camp counselor, and he really enjoys it. Anybody who goes into politics, like Atsushi Onita getting into politics, Great Sasuke getting into politics, Jesse Ventura getting into politics. Shall I continue? Like any wrestler doing any type of politics. Some cases does not surprise me, but if you're wearing a mask or if you've been through like a C4 exploding death match, that does surprise me a little.
All right, let's go over here.
Hi, Bill from Toronto.
Hello, Bill.
So you guys watch an awful lot of wrestling, and some of it is really, really terrible. And you've done this for years, and you've built a really cool career out of it right now.
Yeah.
How on earth do you maintain that level of passion for the product so that your job, because this is a job now, doesn't become something that you're just, oh God, I gotta watch another, an episode of Raw, maybe you have that going in now. But another episode of Raw, I gotta record another podcast, right?
The podcast part is never outside of this morning. This morning was just one where, I was a zombie this morning at 9 a.m. as I just watched 2.5 hours of wrestling. No, the recording part has never been a hassle. Like I genuinely just enjoy talking with Wai about whatever. So the wrestling portions, the thing is, there's so much great wrestling that it really offsets whatever the monotony might be of a long 3-hour Raw. I know, like, that is probably the number one complaint I hear from people is the length of Raw. And for me, like, certainly there are times when I look at my watch and it's 9:30 and I'm ready to die. But I think it's keeping notes and having an outlet at the end where we're doing a show that keeps me engaged. I don't know how all of you do it, that it's like you're not there like taking notes, and it's, to me, that would be much harder for me to be able to do to keep my attention. So Raw can be challenging at times, but a lot of the wrestling now, like, there's so much great stuff, and we're at a point now where something that is fantastic is now the new average. That's what we've kind of evolved through, where, you're looking at G1 matches where people are kind of like shrugging their shoulders at matches that, 5 years ago people would have been circulating everywhere. Like, that's inherently what happens when you use the term raising the bar. That's what raising the bar means, that suddenly a very, very good match becomes the new average.
Yeah, I echo a lot of what he says, but I think like it's, the feeling of like being in a community discussing something, even if it's good or even if it's bad, I think is really fun. Like, it's fun to kind of talk about how much you hated this thing or how much you love this thing with other people who share a similar opinion. So as bad as the shows are, I think as long as there's a community surrounding it and there's discussion coming out of it, I'm still engaged. And it's, really nice that we get to not just review Raw or SmackDown, and we get to review a lot of great wrestling now too, especially this month. Almost too much good wrestling. So if I was like a casual fan, I'd probably pick and choose a little bit more. But like, I can never complain about this career. Like I watch wrestling and talk about wrestling for a living. So
the extremes are fun. Like yes, we can talk about Tanahashi Ospreay, but my interest is perked when I see a tweet that tune in tonight, Maria Kanellis' OBGYN appointment.
Yeah.
Like, I'm down. Like, sure, why not? Give me great or give me awful. Don't give me in between.
Laura from Vancouver.
Hey, Laura.
So when I think of wrestling, I think of it as like one of the most unique ways of telling a narrative or telling a story in the world. Like I don't think there's anything else that does it like that. And I think back to like when Kenny Omega said that it is ballet, which I thought was such a powerful statement because, so much of the time, Jim Ross and all that, this ain't ballet, but when he said it was.
They really have it out for ballet.
And
have you ever seen Black Swan? That's a hard fucking profession.
And like it really hit me when he said that because I thought it was the most important thing I've ever heard said about wrestling. So I'm just wondering what it is about wrestling now and when you first watched it that made you fall in love with it. Because to me, it is like that artistic narrative, that it's physical performance narrative theater that you can't get anywhere else. So I'm just wondering what you guys, how...
Well, like as a kid, I think a lot of people, like the WH or somebody was talking to us about like the crossover between comic books. Yeah, it was WH who was talking about the crossover between comic books and pro wrestling and how that's really big in at least North America. And it's because pro wrestlers are comic books come to life. And that's what drew me in, like on a Saturday morning, flipping through channels and seeing these like muscle-bound guys in colorful costumes, Papa Shango making the Ultimate Warrior puke. I'm like, wow, this is stuff like I can't believe I'm seeing in real life. Like it's a comic book come to life. Puke, like the man making another man puke through like voodoo. Like, cool.
Sign me up.
So like, that's what drew me in initially. As an adult, I think what draws me in continually, not just the in-ring product, but everything behind the scenes is just as fascinating, if not more so. It's one of those things where, like, once you know how it's made, you're even more invested. So, like anybody who ever says, like, you're ruining the business by exposing it, I really disagree. I think telling people how it's done simply makes them more dedicated fans and allows them to appreciate on a different level.
It's something I totally agree with. It really kind of surprises me at times when you'll hear people in the industry talk about the fact that, all the secrets are out and all these fans, they all complain online. And to me, I always kind of just brush that off, that's their Twitter mentions that just kind of get lumped into a lot of fans that are genuinely engaged with all of this. Like these are your most diehard wrestling fans, no different than, fans that follow the box office every weekend at the movies and have an interest in the business side of a chosen profession. Like we don't have I don't know what the Billboard magazine, but we have the Wrestling Observer, and somehow one's different than the other. It's not. Like there's industry trades. It's covered in a very serious fashion where you can have people of wrestling can appeal if you're 8 years old just as much as it can if you're 45 years old. And there's a certain interest in it that I think has maintained a solid foundation of the industry as well. And I think that ultimately, like what got me into wrestling, I was about 8, and I think it's the characters. I think that's ultimately what's going to open up the window for you. Is just you typically hear when someone gets into wrestling, it's because of a personality more so than just a match. I think that's what people are drawn to, and that's where we see these booms come from, because someone catches fire and you get to grow your fan base through that character.
In many ways, I find it to be an incredibly honest form of manipulation. Whereas I think so many other forms of manipulation exist subtly and covertly, like in media, whether it be in politics or just celebrity in general. Where wrestling, these people are acting and trying to make you like them or make you dislike them. And you can kind of discuss and analyze whether or not they're doing a good job. Whereas I think in politics, you can have those discussions as well, but I don't think they're as on the forefront of every fan's mind. Yeah.
You're up next.
Hey guys, Robert from Vancouver. Long time, first time. I wanted to thank you guys for the work you do in the Saudi Arabia post shows. Those are super informative, and they make it so I don't have to watch it and feel bad about myself.
They're for us too, because we don't know how to properly cover them honestly without making it just beneficial in some form, because these shows simply are not benefiting anybody but the people that are,
Absolutely.
profiting from them. So how do we kind of turn this situation into something that, is ultimately healthy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my question is, do you have any more plans to do any more like long-form audio docs like you did with the Owen Hart documentary, which was incredible?
Yeah, thank you very much. I would love to do more of them. I started doing research on like a second one shortly after the Owen Hart one that I just haven't gone back to. I have a few ideas for ones, and again, so much of our ideas just come down to time. That took a lot. I ended up having to pretty much take a week off just to start editing that thing. And after the first day of editing, I was at my parents' place editing this, and I went downstairs. I think I went 10 hours straight of editing that thing, and my mom's like, "What's wrong?" She's like, "I don't know what I got myself into." She was like, "Well, do you have to finish it?" I'm like, "I think I have to finish it. I've done all these interviews. These people would be very upset if I don't finish this." So I had this mission to finish this thing, but I just had to go away because I was like, I can't listen to this anymore. So when I put that out, it was, I didn't know what I had. I was like, this might be good. This might be awful. I have no clue because my brain is just melted from listening to these interviews for hours upon hours. So I would like to do more. If I could get 2 of those a year, I'd be really happy.
It was pretty good.
Oh, thanks.
Jeff from Guelph.
Hello, Jeff.
Which of these is the better Canadian children's show growing up? Polka Dot Door, Today's Special,
Today's
or
Special.
Mr. Dress Up?
Today's special.
Thank you. Whoa, who said Mr. Dress Up? You're a sick person. Honestly. And would you show any of them to your son in today's day and age?
Let me see. Yeah, he's a big Wiggles fan. He's moving on to a Thomas the Tank Engine, I believe.
Are there actually Canadian kids shows anymore?
I don't know. Studio K? Okay.
Paw Patrol's Canadian? Whoa.
Okay. We got a thriving
Blew my
industry.
mind. I need the exclusive. Wow.
No, my favorite as a kid was Today's Special. It was one of the few kid shows I watched. I didn't really watch a whole lot of kid shows, so no. To this day, I swear, if Sami Zayn comes out and that hat comes off, that guy better freeze.
I never watched it. I didn't grow up like here.
Oh, you
until
missed
that
it.
age. Yeah.
Does everyone remember Jody having to go pay the rent at the Hurry Jody? Got to get there before. No. Few people.
Braden's like, what's wrong with these guys?
Braden was born in 2003. So.
Hi, I'm Eamon from Belfast in Ireland, so all these Canadian references are way over my head.
You came all the way from Belfast just for us.
Oh, absolutely.
100%. No other reason. There's nothing else going on in Canada.
So I was just I wanted to ask, I don't know how to form this question, about psychology in wrestling. I think psychology is something that's really missing in modern wrestling. Like when you see Hulk Hogan and The Rock at WrestleMania 18 just staring at the crowd, and the crowd's going nuts. And like last night, you see Adam Cole and Johnny Gargano kicking each other in the face and not selling it at all. So I'm just wondering, do you think there needs to be more psychology in modern wrestling? And do you think it's even possible that they would introduce it into modern wrestling?
I think it depends where you're looking. Like I find New Japan to be kind of like state of the art. I think whenever I watch Kento Miyahara, like I think that it's out there if you're looking for it. I think even in NXT, I mean, you have. I think you do have a base now that it's sort of you're looking for. It's a bit of a risk to go out there and try and tell like a big story that maybe you're planting seeds in the first couple of minutes that are going to pay off in minute 30 through 35. But there's also kind of a template now of we got to hit this, this, and this because we got to keep this audience engaged or else they're not going to be around for minute 35. So I mean it gets very difficult if you're a performer knowing what your audience expects and also on a takeover card, like what that audience wants. So you give some leeway there, but I think if you're looking for it, like there's some masterful like storytellers out there now that, I mean, just through this G1, like it's been phenomenal. It's been some of the best wrestling I've ever watched this past month.
Yeah, I mean, I think storytelling exists in almost every wrestling match if given the time, and that's really the question these days, especially with TV. But I feel like the storytelling is really good for the most part right now, except for like
Bad Luck
that
Fale.
TV show. Even his matches have stories. I mean, it's just you're more so talking about maybe whether or not it's exciting. I guess that's another question. But I feel like you find psychology pretty much anywhere.
WH, who's the best storyteller in professional wrestling right now? There you go. Won't disagree.
Hi, I'm Martin from London, England.
Martin.
Okay, what's your take on the effect that NXT UK has had on the European scene? Like with Progress, they're not selling out as quickly, and there's questions about who's coming through and the availability of top talent. And WXW's recently had to change to production music, and there's like a lot of things going on around there. So, what do you think about like the future of the European scene and how the role that WWE's playing in it and the negative effects it might have?
Well, what are the biggest changes you've seen in 5 years?
Well, I've kind of seen that people who come to try and get a release from WWE just to try to get a breakaway of it, and they're feeling that WWE is invading into their space, as they want to try and like maybe go to other alternative wrestling that's like lower down. So I think like Progress has particularly been affected by it because from the production and from the management and everything. And I feel there's been a much more WWE influence, especially since Jim Smallman and that started working with them.
What are the production changes? I'm curious.
Probably more like the music. I think the music's really affected. They don't have the real music anymore,
Right.
so there's affected the reactions to people. Like you can tell, let's say Jimmy Havoc's theme, you instantly know it's him from the first beat. Whereas like you have these things that people don't know, and it takes them a while, and it kind of really affects the mood.
I mean, like, it sucks, like not being able to use music on our podcast. I think kind of sucks, but I think it's inevitable if you want to branch out of, it's illegal, really. Like, quite frankly, to broadcast music that you don't own. And I think if you want to be legitimate, those are the steps that I think every company has to really take.
Yeah, I think that it's, you look at that market, it's certainly gone through a gigantic change over the past, I would say 2 to 3 years. And I think you're going to have, it's not all that different from the domestic scene here, where you are going to have performers that ultimately, for many, WWE has always been the be-all, end-all. And many guys that, when they got into this 10, 12 years ago, they probably came in with a realization, my body type, my style, I'm not getting to WWE. And now suddenly that becomes an option. And it's interesting to see the performers now that are kind of conflicted. It's, I could go to WWE. Maybe the high point is I get onto television, I become a big star, I can make more there than pretty much anywhere else. Or I could be an assembly line worker in a factory in Florida and I may never get on TV, and it's kind of weighing the financial security versus the fulfillment that a lot of these performers have. I mean, when you're at this level, these guys obsess about their performances and being out there. That, I've got a small window to be at my peak where I feel that I'm a great asset to this company, and yet I'm on the sidelines. And that's why you see some people that want to leave. So it's very lucrative right now for these performers. And I think the UK scene has certainly seen that with so many guys that have been able to sign. And the byproduct is that the local scene, every single scene, like there's only going to be so much demand. And with more shows, people are going to pick and choose. I mean, this weekend was an example of that there's 19 different wrestling shows going on. I can't get to every single one. And you're going to cherry pick. And that'll happen if NXT Canada becomes a thing and they're coming into the market. It's absolutely going to have an effect on the local scene.
Mm-hmm.
Hey guys, Craig from Thorold. I actually got the chance to ask this last night via anonymous cue card to him at his comedy show.
Okay.
Dolph Ziggler. I was wondering if you think his match will be longer or his entrance tonight. He gave me the runaround.
Oh, so. Are you talking about the Goldberg match from 4 nights ago?
Yeah.
Well, I think we all saw how that went, and I'm pretty sure my stopwatch said his entrance was longer, wasn't it? I think it went about 90 seconds, 2 minutes.
I'll have to check my notes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Hey, what did Dolph say?
He said nothing. He got a little awkward about it.
Kind of like...
Zack Ryder laughed at him, and then he just kind of went on his thing.
We're going 25. All right, over here.
Hi, my name's Brad.
The Archivist.
The Archivist.
So, John, you've said right now 6 times so far? Way, just one.
Wow, I'm usually in the lead these days. He's like completely wiped it out of his vocabulary from
Yeah,
what I can tell from
I
your
have
research.
some stats.
Yes,
if
please.
you guys
Yes,
wanna
please.
partake. Yeah.
Wow.
We need a chart. We need a moving chart, a live, up-to-date chart.
There. I want to do this in the form of a quiz, like
Oh.
you do on your
Okay,
show.
okay.
So let's turn this around. There's a special date coming up in a month, roughly.
In September.
Yes. Do you know what it is, first of all? An anniversary. Sorry, an anniversary.
An anniversary in September.
10 years.
Is it the first?
Oh, it was the very first review away.
Right. Okay.
Wow.
So.
As we call them, the lost years.
Do you know the exact date? Because you're the date man.
September, I'm going to guess 14th.
September 10th?
13th.
13th.
Oh.
I was really close. I was really close.
Way closed the show with a song. You guys used to do songs back then. Do you know what
Yes.
song you picked?
It was Ground Zero, so I know
Oh,
that.
yeah.
What kind of song would I choose for a show called Ground Zero?
You did ask if there's any memorial songs, and
Did I?
You guys could name.
I'm probably really embarrassed by a lot of those shows, so tell me.
It was Empire State of Mind by Jay-Z.
Oh, okay.
2009.
all right.
All right, that's not so bad.
So what
Thank
was
God.
the show you guys were supposed to review? You
On the
couldn't-
first show?
Yes. You couldn't find. You went and checked your archive. You couldn't find it.
Dude, this is really hard. I don't.
I know.
I just remember
Would you
picking Ground
expect
Zero.
anything less from me?
No, I wouldn't expect anything less. I thought that was the original choice.
No. It was Breakdown in your house.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever reviewed it since?
No, I don't think we have.
That's correct.
You tell us.
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct.
So we couldn't find Breakdown?
You couldn't find it? I think at an episode like a couple weeks later, you said you did find it in your storage locker or something.
Wow. So we went to Ground Zero.
And you have yet to review it. So, anybody, patrons, if you're gonna request a show,
There you go. The list is wide open.
do you want it, movies? Do you have any idea what the top 5 movies were?
Oh, God.
From September 2009.
September of 2009. Oh, it was probably that goddamn vampire series. What was it
No.
called?
No.
No?
Twilight.
Twilight.
No.
Terrible.
Any guesses?
Fast 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know.
500 Days of Summer.
No. The top movie was Tyler Perry's "I Can Do Bad All by Myself."
Oh, I missed that one.
And then a movie called Number 9. I don't know that one. Inglourious Bastards, All About Steve, and The Final Destination.
The Final Destination.
I think it was the first one.
That was the end.
What was the Billboard number 1?
Oh, I've become good at this game, but 2009 is really pre-Drake. So I'm going to go with Mariah Carey, something.
No. Wait.
Kesha.
Taylor Swift.
Black Eyed Peas.
Oh,
I got
of
a
course.
feeling. Okay. You want to stick with? We'll stick with music. What happened at the 2009 MTV Music Awards? Big.
Did Kanye run up on and steal
That's
Taylor
it.
Swift's trophy?
Yes.
All right.
Can we do champions? I don't want to take too much time. Am I taking too much time?
We'll wrap it up with champions.
Who was the WWE champion on that day? September 13th, 2009.
10 years ago.
The Undertaker. John Cena.
Hold on.
Are you not sure?
I am sure.
Come on, Archivist.
Well, it was John Cena for a portion of that night. It was a
He
Sunday.
lost it that day?
Yeah. To who?
Randy Orton. It had to be. 2009.
There you go. There you
It's
go.
two are attached at the hip.
There you go. All right. That's it.
The Archivist.
Thank you.
everybody. I like giving out the trivia. I don't like answering it. WH made me look foolish on Cruel Summer. I was just, it was tough. Very tough trivia.
Talk about a tough act to follow.
Yeah.
Patrick from Cape Breton, president of the Mavs Gillis fan club and suffering Canadian 76ers fan since this past spring. 2 questions for you guys that I'm not sure if they're connected. One, you guys mentioned Twitter all the time. It's been brought up a number of times today. I'm in your age bracket, and almost none of my friends use Twitter to communicate with their other friends. And
God bless them.
Yeah, I'm a huge internet wrestling fan going back to the 90s, and I don't follow any wrestlers or anything on Twitter. So I was wondering, how much do you think that skews your vision of wrestling, and how much of the audience are wrestlers reaching by using Twitter, and maybe it's lower than you think? And I guess I want to say connected is, you look at the success of AEW, you look at the Road to All Out or Being the Elite, a lot of those videos are getting under 200,000 views, which you'd think if you put them in one city, they shouldn't be able to sell out, and yet they are. Is that Twitter use? Is that other social media? What's the key to their success?
Sorry, the first question was whether or not they're reaching or thinking like their audience is too big.
The second question is, how do you think AEW is reaching all those fans? And the first question is, how do you think I guess by obligation, you guys are wrapped into Twitter, and how much do you think that skews your perspective as a wrestling fan?
I think it's a great question, and like Twitter is something I try to stay away from when I'm about to review a show, just so that I think the people that perhaps we tend to follow might think of a certain way, but these shows aren't being produced just for the people that are like-minded like me. So I try to stay away from other opinions before like giving my own, because it certainly can. At the same time, as far as AEW, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, no, with Twitter, it's like I take it for what it is. Like I think it is a tool we need to monitor, but I wouldn't say it's anything that I live or die by. It's it's immediate reaction from people. So I think you have to temper that. Like you're going to see extremes on any subject, and you just kind of have to realize it's probably somewhere in the middle. I just go through my spurts where I just did like there's no necessary need to be on it every day.
Well, for me, like it's just kind of part of the communal aspect of watching professional wrestling, isn't it? It's sort of like the modern form of what used to be message boards, and everybody getting on and talking about what you thought about the show. And now you can get the opinion though of every single person, and the person that you're talking shit about can actually read it and respond back to you. So that's kind of fun.
I hate those days when I'm just having an awesome day. It's like, you know what? I feel too good about myself. Let me hit at.
No, it's gotten to a point where I think maybe there's been too much access to every single opinion, and maybe we have too much information now, too much access to each other. So I think a bit of curation and a bit of like self-discipline, as when you're going on, is necessary when using things like that. His second question about AEW. I think a lot. I wonder how much of like anybody who's bought a ticket to AEW is watching every single Road to, versus people just going because hey, this thing's really cool. They trust like whatever tastemaker is among their crop of friends, and they just want to go. I don't know. What do you think of that?
I think that it's certainly like their use of social media has been a gigantic advantage for them. I think they've used it very effectively, not just through the Road to series that I'm a big fan of and Being the Elite, but also just how they structure their announcements and build up. I think they really have it down about making an event out of things, which I think the audience really responds to. When you make something feel important, it's that much easier for the audience to take it seriously and see this is a big deal, and that kind of spreads. And it's also, I look at a lot of wrestling right now where it's like big shows do very well, and it's the week-to-week television that I'm always stunned at how many people will tell me that they don't watch weekly television, but SummerSlam will sell out, even if it's people not necessarily following week-to-week TV, or they'll follow NXT through the takeovers and dip in and out of watching the weekly TV. It's funny that television has never meant more for the company's finances, but it's also at a time when viewership has declined significantly, and I think people are seeing television as less important to follow the product at this point. Like, you can follow Raw from a distance and know what the key parts are. And selfishly, it helps, for a show like ours, that some people will just listen to us rather than watch Raw. So I think that's what a lot of people are doing, because again, we keep going back to it. Your time is limited. You don't have time to follow all this stuff. And I think AEW, they do get that advantage of they're not asking for a lot of your time. A Road to show is 8 minutes, and it's awesome. And that's something that they're going to have to adjust to when suddenly they're asking for 2 hours every Wednesday.
What's up, gentlemen? How you doing?
Do you guys recognize that voice?
Can you maybe give us a sample?
I have bronchitis, so
This is the man behind the Rewind a SmackDown theme.
It's the identity crisis.
What's up, Toronto? How y'all doing? First of all, thank you guys for all the hard work, the hours that you log. You guys have, I think I speak on behalf of everybody here. You guys have really provided us with hours and hours and hours of content that just get us through the day. So thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Thank you for lending your voice to.
What's that?
Thank you for lending your voice.
So I got a couple questions for you. First of all, do you think it's absolutely necessary in 2019 for pro wrestling to still be using inflated heights and weights? Like the biggest pay-per-view draw in combat sports is Conor McGregor's 145, 155. And my second question is, with all the hours of stuff that you guys have to watch, what other content are you consuming that's not wrestling related?
Nothing. No. In terms, like, the exaggerated heights and weights and attendance figures, that's just so ingrained that I really don't think twice about it. But the mentality towards it, I think, is definitely an issue where, I mean, you see, when Conor McGregor was kind of like at his height, like obviously just like trying to ride every wrestling fan, and you had the performers coming back and just saying, this guy would be on 205 Live. It's like, that mentality is just so stupid to me that it's like this idea that I think they are evolving past, and you can see that in their hiring practices, that smaller talent does not mean like that cannot be someone that draws for you and does very well. I think that's a mentality that needs to change, that you can draw huge money regardless of size. I don't think that's ever been a hindrance. And I think that's been a gigantic weakness in Vince McMahon's idea of talent, is thinking that size necessarily equals money. And his track record doesn't really bear that out of the biggest money drawing, baby faces and heels that he's had. It doesn't necessarily subscribe to that.
I agree. I think it's a pretty antiquated, opinion. Sometimes it's kind of fun to say like, you're 6 feet, like it's fun to point out. But I don't think it's necessary at all. And your second question was?
What other content you guys consume?
I just started watching The Boys on Amazon Prime with my girlfriend, who's by the merch stand right now. It's excellent. I'm 4 episodes in, and as soon as this whole week is done, I'm digging through the rest. Yeah.
I've just been watching the Loudest Voice, which is the Showtime series on Roger Ailes, with Russell Crowe playing Roger Ailes. It's a fantastic series. It's based on the book that came out a few years ago, and that's about it. Actually, I started watching Billions a few months ago, and I kind of fell out of that. And the best scene was the Paul Giamatti's character all of a sudden is doing jujitsu with John Danaher.
Oh,
this guy who's this.
Wow. Yeah, John Danaher.
Very interesting jiu-jitsu instructor.
Yeah.
You guys just gave us the market research of our MMA crossover in this room.
It's a big deal to me.
So anyway, so that's about it. Honestly, it's hard to keep up.
Thanks, Paul.
Over here.
Yo.
MJ from NJ.
MJ from NJ.
MJ, applause.
Thank you.
The host of the Up Next Takeover post show last night. It was his hotel room that hosted it.
Curious what other luminaries from New Jersey we have in attendance today.
Anyone? Anyone else from New Jersey?
Oh.
Congratulations on another great G1 season. And by the time people listen to this, you guys
You mean
will
the
have completed
performers
it.
or us?
No, you.
Oh, okay.
It's really been, I think I might have mentioned this to you guys before. It's the thing that drew me into New Japan was listening to your reviews of the G1 and made me want to get into the G1 and watching it regularly. So this is now like the 3rd year I've done it, and you guys do a killer job with the reviews. As a reward, you're going to get the craziest time in television for pro wrestling coming up in October. Mm-hmm. And if you're up for it, quick, likely, unlikely on some TV questions.
Sure.
Absolutely. Oh, look at all these guys with material.
So AEW starts in October 2019.
Likely.
Will they be on TNT by October 2020?
Likely. Yes.
Likely, yeah.
SmackDown is going to air on Fox in the year 2020, 48 weeks, which
Likely.
means they will not be preempted more than 4 times.
Likely.
Likely.
Paul Heyman and or Bischoff are both in these roles SummerSlam next year.
I mean,
oh Jesus, I love it. Now, can this be both are gone or one's gone, one's
Both.
there?
Let's do separate.
Both are in
Yep,
these roles.
separate.
okay, in title, right? Like, because you can argue what their roles.
We don't know
are
what
they
they're.
right
Yeah,
now.
so in title, they are still in these positions.
I'll say unlikely.
If we're talking both of them, I'm going to say unlikely as well.
If you had to pick one to be gone sooner,
Heyman gone, Bischoff in.
really?
Because I see Eric Bischoff understanding that this is a great job for him, and I think he knows how to navigate that system. And Paul Heyman in this increased role where he's been part of creative for a while, but now it's like he's in this pressure cooker, and that guy to his end will have a short fuse. And I imagine that there will come the day that there's an enormous blow up like they had in 2006, and I'm certain that Paul Heyman still exists in some form. So of the people that I expect to just light a match near the gasoline, I go with Heyman over Bischoff.
Over under 3 MMA crossovers, so we can include Ronda and Brock. So there'd be one more appear on SmackDown by the end of this year on Fox.
By the end of this year. Oh, I'll say unlikely.
They're not on SmackDown yet, so
Okay.
throw them in.
Okay. So people that could be in their system then. Then I'll go likely. I think that they are going to throw everything at the wall, and whether it's people from the past, whether it's bringing up people from NXT, getting new faces on TV, I think they're going to be throwing everything out there. So fast tracking a Riddle, which I don't think is the worst idea. Yeah, sure. I'll say likely.
Do you see Ronda coming back before the end of the year for that Fox kickoff, or at least at some point in the next?
For an appearance, I could see not to wrestle.
And the last one is over under 3 promotions, and some of them have been talked about already today, start to be on the WWE network regular. So you can watch it weekly, you can watch whatever shows.
I'll
they're
say
doing.
likely. Yeah, I think when they introduce that tiered system, I think there's going to be a handful of them. I don't think we're just getting Evolve and ICW.
Over.
Do you have 3 that you'd predict right away? Evolve being one.
Evolve being one, ICW being one. I think there's a good chance WXW could end up there. And Progress, yeah. Yeah, Progress for sure. So that's 3 right there.
Cool. Talk to you next year.
Thanks, MJ.
Thanks, MJ.
Hey guys, I'm Robert from Brooklyn, and we have time for 3 more questions. I just want to let you know that, and then we're going to jump into our meet and greet.
Awesome. All right. It's a great question.
Great question.
He wins the shirt. We know a guy.
All right, so Nav from Brampton, also
Yeah.
proud patron. I think my wife is also a patron by default because I start my mornings with you guys all the time, and she does complain, but it is what it is. But in a good way. She knows a lot about your lives now, and she's like, she'll ask me every now and then. 2 questions. First is regarding Aleister Black. I know there was a question earlier about Cesaro. I know a lot of us didn't like the room that he was in.
Oh, I loved it. Every week, that was my highlight. Stay in that room forever.
What was quite fascinating yesterday at the SummerSlam meet and greet, which if you haven't gone, don't go. It's horrible. Is he had the longest line, and to the point where they closed it really early. And I don't know, like the guy to me just screams star. Just his presence, even when meeting him, like you just get the sense that he could potentially be a top guy. And to me, I saw it as the room probably had no effect on his popularity, and he's still delivering. So would love to get your take on where you see him potentially going. The second question I have is mainly around post-wrestling. Obviously, there's another question around media and how there is a lot more interest in covering wrestling. And we saw Pro Wrestling Sheet get picked up by Collider last year. So would you guys ever entertain the possibility of having your platform, but it being backed by a bigger media company again? Or is this something where it's completely entrepreneurial and you want to keep it this way? Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, nothing got really serious, but like several months into this, like we had like some interest because it was the idea of like picking me up for MMA coverage and then just buying up the site. And it was like, it was nothing me and Wai ever entertained. And it was like, we were pretty adamant after that. Like neither of us are looking at that. We kind of went through that system of having like a parent company. I have no desire to go back to that. So that was my answer.
Yeah.
Wait, fuck that. I'm cashing out, man.
No. I echo the same sentiments. I mean, not right now. I think it's a lot to take on, like with just two people doing a lot. But I think the security, or at least like the security of us being in charge of our own destinies, is pretty nice. So I'm enjoying it right now.
Yeah, that's pretty concrete. And to your prior question, which was, refresh me. Aleister Black. I'm with you. I don't think the room stuff was detrimental, and I agree with you. I see that guy as being like a top level babyface or heel. I think he could thrive in a babyface role. Like when you're looking at the quote unquote like next guy, he'd be on my short list in that system. And I don't think that there's a huge list of them as well, of guys that could that checks off all the boxes and can also work within that system that I think becomes tougher and tougher when you look at some of the restraints and then you see guys when they leave the company, what the drastic differences are. So I watch Aleister Black closely because I think that guy is someone you want to handle very carefully on the main roster, which, it's a crapshoot what it's going to be. And I think it's still kind of to be determined with him.
I think as long as they give him room to like work the style that he works, he will get over with that audience, regardless of what type of promo. And I think a lot of people actually enjoy his promos. As much as we might make fun of him, like some people might enjoy him on like a Matt Hardy level, or whatever. So, but as long as he gets to wrestle like that, I think it doesn't matter what he says.
Enunciation is a money drawing tactic in 2019.
Hey guys, Jared from Ottawa. So I'm just wondering if you think, like with the success that Jon Moxley has had, has that kind of set the template for how people will leave the WWE now, especially in terms of like the promo videos and I'm thinking in terms of like the tell-all podcast, or do you think that there would still be some fear from performers about like the legal troubles that CM Punk had and not wanting to express too much on a podcast? And I just kind of follow up to that. Do you think that we'll start to see like NDAs become part of performer contracts in the WWE because of that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it's something that some writers that have left, I mean, that's been worked in certain aspects.
Anderson as well, right?
Yeah, so I mean, it gets into like a real interesting discussion of like what an independent contractor necessarily owes a company that ultimately what you're jeopardizing is future royalties that even though you're not with the company, you still will get a check. And that's something guys don't want to jeopardize. I don't think we're going to see a plethora of situations like Jon Moxley. That entire scenario is never happening again, where a guy gets that level of send off and is just sent out into the woods and we don't know where this guy's going. And he gets this incredible send off from the company. I don't think you're seeing that happen. And I think that there's very few guys that are going to be in that level of position that will be able to walk away from the money WWE is throwing at these guys. Like some of the things I hear, it's unbelievable what the money these guys are making. And that's been the early value of AEW. It has raised the floor for so many performers in WWE that are making way more than they would have been 2 years ago. But I think that if you are leaving and you want to create a buzz for yourself, that's certainly a way to go about it. And I think Moxley did it in a very smart way because nothing he said on that podcast was going to come back to bite him legally. Like he was, I think, very careful with what he said and what he didn't say. And ultimately, like, don't lie when you go on these shows because they're going to be watching and listening to these with a microscope in case you veer out because I think that they're going to look at that stuff. NDAs are something, you could possibly see because they don't want to have that egg on their face of performers going out and kind of showing you what their situations were.
I don't know if like a ton of like WWE performers, if they ever left, would have the same personality to do the type of interview that he ended up doing on Jericho. But I think the idea of making your own videos to promote yourself, investing in that, to just like spur up, hype surrounding your free agency, I think it's awesome. You get a great sense of like what somebody sees themselves as versus maybe what a writer sees themselves as. And if, if people can afford it, and I think in many cases it's very affordable these days to just create something like, like what Moxley did. I look forward to seeing that.
And our final question from the G1 statistician himself, Chris Engler.
going back to the question about how WWE inflates their numbers, how does the fact that they're a publicly traded company cross over with that? Because I'm assuming they can't do that with things like subscriber numbers on their shareholders' calls, right?
No, I mean with the WWE, it's like typically they will like what they say on TV. Like there's no real, like kind of recourse for that. But I mean, their real numbers they do put out when they put out like their KPIs. Like you can go in there and get like as close to an approximation of what the real WrestleMania number is. So it's not like they're filing work numbers to the SEC. Like you are getting the legit numbers, but it's, what's on TV, it's largely.
So that's unregulated. They could just say whatever they want on TV?
On TV, they could, like no one's going to be holding the WWE to some kind of ethical standard of what they promote on television because that's for them part of the show. But in their press releases though, and this is interesting, like what they will every year at WrestleMania, they send out a press release with the inflated number, but the legit gate. So the gate they do not like fudge numbers on, but that's what they do. And you get like at times like a 15,000 person difference between what the actual attendance was, the paid attendance, and however they arrive at that other figure. If they're counting every single person in the arena, employees, everyone with the stadium, I don't see how you still arrive at the larger number. But yeah, there's always that big discrepancy. But yeah, they do file like their legit numbers that everyone can access.
Thank you, Chris.
What a nerdy question to end this.
Hey guys, we've got
KPIs.
We've got one bonus question, a very exciting bonus question.
Oh man, this guy.
And then we're gonna set up for the Q&A. All right, or I mean the meet and greet. Yeah.
That's too much pressure.
What's your name?
My name's Galvin. I'm from Ireland. I live in Aurora.
You were here for the last time Takeover was here in Toronto.
I was.
And man, I met you after Takeover. You had a great time that night at Takeover. And man.
I was shit-faced.
Oh my God, dude. This guy was hugging me. He was like a memorable interaction.
What was the bonus question? Oh, I didn't even have to say that. He hugged me. But anyway, your guys' chemistry is incredible. I love every show you do. And congratulations on your success.
Thank you.
2 questions. I've never watched Shehori. I saw her last night. Shehori. That proves that I've never seen her before. Her charisma is on the level of The Rock. She drew me in. Her moves were incredible. Even after the match, just like get out of the ring. She was incredible last night. Where do you think her ceiling is? And a second question / statement is, you seem to be incredibly respected, John, in the MMA community with your interviews and the content you put out. I don't know if you know that the UFC currently in the UK is on BT Sport, and now the BT Sport has put it behind a pay-per-view wall.
Mm-hmm.
My brother hasn't been able to see the last 2 events because of the pay-per-view wall, because you have to subscribe to a premium package and then pay pay-per-view prices. How do you think this is going to affect the UFC in the UK / Ireland, because my brother lives in Ireland, going forward? Because I think that's a bad move, because ever since I've been a kid, all WWE and UFC has been free. Like, you just pay for the premium sports package, you get it all free. And now they're going behind the pay-per-view wall, and there's uproar about it. Anyway, thank you for your content.
Yeah. Number one, Io Shirai is awesome. So that I think her ceiling's very, very high. I think she's phenomenal as a heel. She had a tremendous match on Saturday with Candice LeRae. So you always look at, they can have a surefire thing. Like I thought Asuka's like, you can't screw this up. But they amaze me. So, I mean, you always kind of have it tempered. I mean, do you think
honestly, like her ceiling is really as high as I think she's allowed to reach, and I think we're kind of seeing what the ceiling is right now with very similar wrestlers on the main roster. I don't really have too high hopes, for when she makes that transition. Not seeing the track record that they've had with those two. So
she's definitely getting a new name.
Yeah.
E-O. How do you spell the rest of it? She's Tracy. She's fucking Tracy. In terms of the MMA question, it's definitely a hindrance for some. Like, it's not all that different than the US model. You have to get ESPN Plus just to be able to buy the pay-per-views. So I think that ultimately it's going to come down to the big shows will still do well because when there's a big fight, people will go through all the hoops. But the lower ones, yeah, what may have been, I'm home on a Saturday night, I'm going to watch this, it probably becomes skippable at that point when you're putting extra paywalls in front of people. That's kind of the risk, but also where you're trying to get the most money out of your audience. And that's something the UFC is doing at the moment. So I think people will get used to it. It's kind of the system that's been in place here where you've got to pay for the biggest shows. But I totally understand when you have a generation that's been brought up that expects it'd be no different than here that all of a sudden the Maple Leafs playoff games are suddenly on pay-per-view. Like, you'd have an uproar about it, even though if you're an MMA fan, you know that the biggest shows you have to pay for. So it's a mentality that not everyone's going to be on board for it. And the product now, it's like, it's lukewarm to me. It's not something that you're going to have people just jumping at, well, the UFC, I'm going to plop down my money for. I think people are being more selective with the shows they watch because all due respect, like when there's a fight card in Uruguay with Valentina Shevchenko and Liz Carmouche and very little else, that becomes a very skippable show for them.
What's been your favorite question today?
Oh, our favorite questions. The ballet question is going to be my selection.
Great question.
I thought that was a great question.
So, Laura, she already has a shirt. We'll give her the cassette.
Oh my God.
And my other question, I got to give one to the archivist. So the archivist, congratulations. Thank you for all that research. I want to give you a shirt. Thank you, all of you. Like, this was one of the coolest things we've ever been able to do. It means so much to see every single one of you take your time out, buy a ticket, get in here. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I just want to thank all the people who helped make this possible for us. Daniel, Natalie, and Matt here with Second City, Caitlyn, Pauline, and Robert. Without them, we wouldn't be pulling this off. And everyone that is attached to Post Wrestling. Like, I know a lot of us get kind of a credit for a lot, but it's more than just a two-man team with Braden, with Davey, WH, Mike Murray's here, who's been a huge help to us, the British Wrestling Experience crew. Today is Nate Milton's birthday, so happy birthday to Nate. Phil Chertok, our whole team. It's really fun to be able to do all this stuff with our friends, and we have some of the most talented people working on our site. And you listeners help keep this whole thing rolling. So we thank you so much for spending a bit of your SummerSlam weekend with us, and I hope that we can do another one of these sometime soon.
Absolutely. Before we go, can we take a quick photo from everyone?
Yeah, let's do a group shot.
No dog filter, I promise.
Oh.
Ready, everybody. 1, 2, 3. Alrighty. As good as it's gonna get. Thank you so much.
Guys, let's hear it again for John and Wai.
Awesome.
All right, now I think we are going to do a little meeting and greeting, correct? Yeah, I think if you wouldn't mind, the way we're going to do is we're going to have the line wrap up around the stage, and then when you guys are done, you can kind of keep the loop going out the back. But otherwise, yeah, we're going to start the line here. We can bring it up on stage, and you guys will meet and greet John and Wai on John's side of the table. So, yeah. All right. You got plenty of practice earlier going up to the mics. Now we can practice making a line.